It's week 2 of English as a medium of instruction for academics. This is my colleague Rob and I'm Mary. I think you know us both by now.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much indeed for your wonderful contributions this week. And we've got quite a few things to say as a result of reading all your wonderful comments. Rob, where would you like to start?
Okay. I will agree first of all and say yes, they were really, really wonderful comments this week, and thank you for those. Some great conversations are coming up, really getting to the heart of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I noticed that they're very, very perceptive comments, which is wonderful. It's great credit to you so early on in the course that you feel comfortable enough to really go for it and say something that's deep, personal, and reveal something of yourself, you know, something of your authenticity. So this is fantastic.
So I'm going to start with the videos.
Oh yes, the videos.
Because it gives me a good link, and linking is important in our presentations. So the link here is personal and contextual. So lots of the comments on the videos and the videos you shared, which were mostly brilliant as examples, lots of the speakers contextualized the talk really well in their own experience or in something that's practical and engaging for the students. So lots of the talks were on the students' terms, and some of the key things that came out there is kind of clarity, so how they made themselves clear or unclear, how they put it into the context of the learners, not of themselves. So maybe they use stories of themselves to make it understandable for the learners and make the human connection, which is really important. Also, we notice people doing things. So EMI, often the instruction part, can be misleading. It's not about talking to people or presenting your knowledge endlessly. It can also be about demonstrating, showing, making links between how things work in theory and how things work in practice. There's also signalling, signalling parts of lectures, repeating parts that are important, using humour, considering the type of medium. So one of the examples posted was a blog style video, which now as educators, we can create things like that. So we might put that online to explain something. So if the students are struggling in the lecture theatre, we can put things online now. We can record ourselves talking, and the students consume it in a different way. So this is really important in the modern age of education. And again, key to this is also how personal people make it. I think the biggest and most important things for me is not sort of a method or a strategy for managing the classroom. It can be just about how people communicate their passion, their enthusiasm, and also their likability, if that's a word. So
it is now.
It is now. It is now a word. So we essentially, I think all good educators we've had in the past, the most fundamental thing that we take away is I like that person. I respect that person and I'm willing to learn from that person. And how you achieve that is so different. And we've seen that in the videos, but they're really great examples of this. And if I can just link on, I'll just link it to humour, because I think, Mary, you're going to mention something about this as well.
Yes.
But just that Peter mentioned, that's one of his greatest assets as a teacher. Yes. And I would agree with that as well for me, but it's not for everybody. Jamie mentioned that he uses physical humour more than sort of wordplay humour because it's more understandable and universal. Erkan mentioned a very important point that comes up in everything we say, that it can come from students as well. So you are not the only person performing. Good education involves dialogue, it involves students doing things too, and they can bring humour forward as well. So humour works better as a two-way than a one-way, or multiple way, we should say. And also Fabia mentioned it's not always appreciated, and it certainly is not always aligned. So one of the videos I saw mentioned like jokes based on Christianity, which wouldn't be understood by countries that don't know the story of the Bible, or jokes based on leaders in the UK that people wouldn't know in other countries. So this kind of thing can be quite cultural, and people might laugh. Like, there is research that shows students laugh even though they don't understand. They just think, I'm expected to laugh now.
Yes, yeah.
So, okay, over to you. That was my
summary.
And
I think we'll talk more about humour and cultural issues around humour in the weeks to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to, thank you for the wonderful examples you gave of lectures, the use of visuals and so on. But what's coming through to me more and more as we continue to talk in more and more depth about EMI is this contrast between the harder skills, if you can call them that, the harder skills of teaching, managing the classroom, and then the softer skills of motivation, which is really important, your environment, the context that you're in, the confidence of the teacher, the confidence of the students, your passion for your subject, your enthusiasm, really wanting to get to share your knowledge with your students and create the environment that means that learning can happen. Getting to know your audience and making those choices that are appropriate to your audience. These are what I call the softer skills, and for me, they're more interesting because they're more people-centred, I think. So I can see that I'm learning tremendously by listening and reading what you have to say, and this is what I think is the most exciting thing about this course, is that everybody is learning. Rob and I are learning the whole time from you, because it is such a big area and such a relatively new area. So I wanted to share that with you, that it is, as we've said right from the start, more than just getting the words right and more than just managing the classroom, but it's getting to know the audience and being authentic yourself, if you can be, and creating that safe space where your students can be authentic as well. So I think that's really what we wanted to say with regard to the videos, isn't it? Yes. Shall we move on to the use of the voice and that section? Because there were quite a number of points that you made about your pace of delivery, whether you speak too quickly. Some of you mentioned that you perhaps speak too quickly for your audience. Others might be slower and so on. But are you actually aware of how you come across to your students? And I would encourage you, if you haven't done it before, to record yourself. Now, we're being recorded professionally by Mimi, who you can't see, but she's here in the room with us. You don't have to have a professional person with you, a professional camera person. Just recording yourself on your phone might be enough. And you can do this in the privacy of your home. Listen to your voice and see how you deliver, when you're speaking loudly, more loudly to a large group of people, and just try and be objective and see how you might come across. I mean, if you feel that you could invite a colleague, if you have a colleague has the time to come in and give you feedback on this, it's very, very valuable. So that self-knowledge is tremendously important if you can find a way of being objective and accessing that view of yourself that other people have. It's a bit scary in the beginning if you haven't done it before, but be brave and try and have a go.
Yeah.
Was there anything else on delivery or voice that you wanted to
I was going
add?
to mention, I will expand.
Please
Yes.
expand.
Just that I would say that one thing that came across with the examples that were specific to different people participating in the comments and the conversations one thing that came across is that somebody always emphasised what you said, and that's the audience and the setting. So there's no such thing as good language if your audience can't understand you and don't understand what you're trying to do. So it's always that alignment. So with the recording, I'd also suggest it's a good idea. So recording yourself is a good way of practicing how you know, being aware of your speech, but practicing your actual teaching practice. If you record your lecture, for example, you can see how in the real communication context you would be perceived by your students. And as I would always say that language always fits context. It always fits goals and purposes. And that's very scary to do. And I hate watching myself. I hate even these videos. I don't like watching them.
Yes, we laugh at one another.
Yes, yeah. But again, it's this idea that you can see how your mannerisms are perceived when you're really teaching and when those people are really in the room. And sometimes it's actually, you know, you think, oh, I did quite a good job there, where you didn't think you would, because something is natural, something comes across when you try and connect with people that doesn't necessarily happen when you're talking to a camera, even if there is a Mimi in the room. Yeah, so that's what I was going to expand there.
Yeah. There are wonderful suggestions coming through from a great number of you about, you know, the tricky situations that you find yourself in. And I'd like to emphasise something that I think I said last week, but I can't really remember, that small things can have great impact. I think we want a kind of magic solution, don't we? EMI can be really hard. There's no getting away from it. It can be really difficult. It can pose so many different problems and difficulties for the individuals involved, both the learners and the teachers. And we sometimes want a magic solution when in fact it's often little things that count greatly in the successful delivery of a lecture or a series of lectures or a module. And I've thought very much about, you know, one of the buzz terms at the moment is the flipped classroom. Well, not everybody can do that because it demands possibly technology and so on. But even people who are in quite limited circumstances, who perhaps don't have the support of a Mimi, as we do here, can do a flipped classroom-esque session, because it basically boils down to planning, doesn't it? It's planning what's going on before the session and what's going on during the session and what's going on after the session, and giving students, in whatever format it is, whether it's an actual recording of something that you've said, that you mentioned earlier, Rob, or reading matter, appropriate materials before the classroom can make a tremendous difference on what you can do within the classroom scenario, and it can help your students focus on the content and less perhaps on the language that you're using to deliver the content. So please read through these little tips, and I would say that the thing that's coming through strongly, and I've forgotten who it was who mentioned it, but this planning for what goes on before you deliver your session is really important, and it doesn't have to be high tech at all. Would you agree?
I would agree.
You always agree with me, don't you?
Yes, I wouldn't dare to oppose you,
Such
Mary.
is the power.
And yeah, and I'd add to that as well that there are, as we mentioned, with examples of providing videos, providing readings, or pointing out there are lots of materials online now that you didn't make. They're not affiliated with your university, but students can access them. And I would say, you know, if, for example, somebody mentioned a lecturer who got the feedback their voice is difficult for students to follow and students were bored, then my first response, rather than changing the voice, would be not relying on your voice to convey so much information. There is always another way other than the teacher speaking to students.
Yes.
There's always another way of conveying knowledge and getting students engaged with content. So that teacher can mix it up and have key parts of the lecture where they talk, but other parts where students are doing something different. So yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Just the name check as usual this week. We've already mentioned a few of these people: Peter, Jamie, Elena, Erkan, Geeta, Fabia, Simadeep, Oliver, Rachel, Sashiko are names that keep popping up constantly. And I know that there are other people who are spending just as much time and committing a lot of their effort and energy in their busy lives to this course, but they haven't actually taken the plunge of writing a comment yet. So do please, if you feel you can, please put a comment or just like to begin with. That's a fairly easy thing to do, is just to like something that somebody has said. And perhaps later those likes would become comments or questions. We'd love that to happen. I don't know if we've mentioned yet the Facebook group, but we do have a Facebook group, and I know that not everybody uses Facebook, and I know that Facebook doesn't actually happen much in some countries. But if you are interested, we'd love you to join our community. We'll talk more about this later towards the end of the course, but I wanted to flag this now, that there is a Facebook group which has the same name as this MOOC, and it's there for people to ask questions and just be a community after this MOOC has finished. Are there any other things you wanted to say, Rob?
My quote of the week.
Your
as
quote
you
of the
have
week.
not
I
done
had a
it.
quote of the week. So
Yes.
what was your quote of the
Mine
week?
is Elena's. So the teaching process is lively like a growing body with sudden and unpredictable moments. That is why speaking and writing look different.
Yes.
And why we have to be flexible and engaging
Yes.
in the teaching process. And I thought you'd like that. Do you like that?
I like it very,
Wonderful.
very much indeed.
Okay. You have
and thanks
pleased
to
Mary.
Elena.
Okay.
Yeah. Wasn't it Elena last week?
It was. She's on a roll. A
Elena,
metaphorical roll.
there's great pressure on you to produce a quotable quote for next week.
Yes.
Anyway, I think that's it, isn't it, for this week?
Yes.
We're really looking forward to communicating with you next week. Dying to see what you have to say. And have a good week from a rather rainy and blustery and dark Southampton.
And I should also apologise for wearing the same shirt as I was wearing in the videos this week. I do own more clothes, I should tell you. But yes, equally, thank you from me as well.
Thank you. Hope the sun's shining where you are.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you in week 3.